Okay, good morning, class. So, my name is Ryan A. Larmo, and I will be your teacher for the next topic, which is the learners with socio-emotional disorders. So, as you can see in the picture, let us analyze first the picture. So, not every disabilities is visible. So, when you see disabilities, we associate this with a person's life, impaired feet, in handicapped, blind, or something that is unnatural for a normal person. But some disabilities also look like this. They are just normal persons. Why? Because their disability is not in a form of physical way, but it is mentally and socially. So today we will gonna tackle about those disabilities, and these are the socio-emotional disorders. So social-emotional disorders affects an individual's ability to regulate emotions, forms relations, and engage in social interactions. These disorders can significantly impact daily lives, making it challenging to navigate in social situations and maintain emotional well-being. So, of course, we human, we experience some uh, difficulties when it comes to engaging in social relations, but this time it will become a disability if it will be unusual or excessive. So, emotional behavioral disorder or emotional disturbance means that a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to mark a degree that adversely affects a child's education and performance. So, if a child's education is being affected by his emotional and behavioral disorder, then this should be um, uh, this should be addressed. So, this is sometimes associated with social disturbance or emotionally challenged. It is an umbrella term that falls in under two distinct categories: the psychiatric disorder and behavioral disabilities. But this time, we will just focus on the psychiatric disorder. So here are the four types of psychiatric disorder. We have anxiety attack, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, and bipolar disorder. So first, let's tackle about anxiety attack. So anxiety attack is a sudden episode of intense fear or distress, often triggered by the stress of or overwhelming situation. While anxiety attack is not a formal medical term, people use it to describe a surge of anxiety that can cause physical and emotional symptoms. So, in simple terms, anxiety is an excessive fear of something, like a sudden. But there's a misconception that when you say anxiety attack, it's similar to um, panic attack. But before that, here are the common symptoms for the anxiety attack. First, we have the shortness of breath or hyperventilation when we are panting a lot without like it's not a normal rhythm of breathing, sweating and trembling, rapid heartbeat and palpitation, dizziness or lightheadedness, and chest tightness and discomfort, nausea and upset stomach, feeling overwhelmed or out of control. So sometimes these symptoms are kind of we can say that this is just overreacting, but when these symptoms really occur to some person, then we really should check if the person is really having an anxiety attack, because these are just a common symptoms and it could indicate something else aside from anxiety attack. So here, anxiety attack versus panic attack. So what are the big difference of this one? Anxiety attack typically builds up gradually in a response to stress, whereas panic attack occurs suddenly and intensely, occurring often without an obvious trigger. Panic attack can also include extreme fear of dying and or out of control. So the big difference between anxiety attack and panic attack is that panic attack is sudden, without any distinct reason. Anxiety attack is gradual, which means that it can happen over time. It can happen in an hour, but the panic attack is just sudden. Like anytime I could scream here, I could show my intense fear without any distinct reason, without any possible reason for you to think. That is panic attack. But when you see me here, doing panting, doing those common symptoms, and then later on, I became out of my mind, losing control, and I'm having extreme fear, then that is what we call anxiety attack. Now, moving on to the next psychiatric disorder, we have depression. So depression is sometimes misconceived as anxiety. So here is the distinct definition of depression. Depression is a mental health disorder that affects mood, thoughts, and behavior. It is characterized by a persistent sadness, loss of interest, and emotional distress that lasts for a week or a month. So if you are feeling stressed, then this could be a sign of depression. But if it is just for today, well, sometimes it could be a gateway for a real depression. But a real depression is really when you are having a loss of interest of something that could really affect your day-to-day life, day-to-day basis. So if a person is having a loss of interest today and then tomorrow and then the preceding days, then that could be a sign of the big depression. Depression can interfere with daily life and may require professional treatment. It's because when you are losing interest of living, then that could lead to suicidal, which we know that it is really common. So we should not really think of something that I am distressed because of this or because of that, because depression is really a serious thing. Here are the common symptoms of depression. We have persistent sadness and emptiness, loss of interest in activities, even though we are required to do something like this, or we are forgetting ourselves. We lose ourselves already. Fatigue or low energy, sleep disturbance like insomnia or excessive sleeping. When you are lack of sleep, you could be prone to depression. And if you are oversleeping, you could also be prone to depression. Difficulty in concentrating is also one. Feeling of worthlessness or guilt. This is also one thing. And also thought of death and suicide. So this is the final stage of depression. Like when you are having the symptoms, when you are having a thought of death and suicidal, then this should be treated by medical professionals already. It should be seen by professionals. Next, we have obsessive and compulsive disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, involves a cycle of obsession and compulsion that interferes with the daily life, daily basis. Obsession are unwanted, distressing thoughts, fears, and urge that repeatedly enter the person's mind, while compulsion are behaviors or mentally rituals performed to alleviate the anxiety caused by obsession, to even though they may not be logically connected with a fear. Now, the obsession can lead to compulsive compulsive compulsions. Example: we are familiar with some people who are with obsessed with arranging things, like arranging things from size, from colors. So those are obsessions, and that obsession can lead to compulsion, that every time she sees that the pens are organized, crayons are in not sorted by colors, then automatically they will they will arrange it symmetrically, and that's a sudden response without even connected to fear. So here are some common characteristics of OCDs. Intrusive thought, unwanted fears or worries about causing a distress. So some peoples are very compulsive when it comes to like their safety, even though it is unlikely to happen. For example, a person is always checking the gas, even though in every minute he or she is checking it. Also, the some people are obsessive with a washing their hands when they touch something, even though it can cause them harm. Some next is compulsive behavior, repetitive action or ritual performed to ease the anxiety. So, if a person is feeling unease when you touch something, which basically can cause harm, he or she will immediately wash her hands repeatedly, mm, repeatedly like over. We can say that it's overreacting, but when like if a person touches his face, then he will wash his hands immediately. Then um, next he touches the doorknob and then wash his hand immediately, just like that. It's a very common thing for a person who is having OCD. Next is loss of control. Individual feels powerless to stop their thoughts and behavior. So sometimes person with OCD is feeling powerless, like hopeless, that he could overcome his fear of this one, fear of dying, fear of having contaminations, just like that. Now, here are the types of OCDs. So we have checking OCDs, just like what I've told you before, that obsessive checking of something that is already been checked many times, like locks, appliances, and personal belongings. Next is contamination OCDs. Like what I've said before, it's a fear of germs leading to excessive cleaning. Symmetry OCD, a person who is unease when he or she sees unperfectly aligned or arranged things. Harm OCD is also one thing, but this is uncommon. This is a fear of accidentally harming oneself or others. And lastly, intrusive thoughts OCD, disturbing thoughts about violence, religion, and morality. So, those are just some of the um, psychiatric disorders, but Miss Bianca will introduce you the last one, which is the bipolar disorder. So, thank you very much for listening, and Miss Bianca will take over.
So now, let's proceed to the fifth branch of the learners with socio-emotional disorder, which is the bipolar disorder. So, the bipolar disorder, formerly called manic depressive illness or manic depression, is a mental illness that causes unusual shifts in a person's mood, energy, or activity levels and concentration. So these shifts can make it difficult to carry out day-to-day tasks. So people with bipolar disorder experience periods of unusually intense emotion changes and their sleeping patterns and activity levels, and also they engage in a behavior that are out of character for them. So often without recognizing there are more likely harmful or undesirable effects. So, these distinct periods are called mood of episodes. So, accommodation and modification, decreased readings, assignments, or having books on tapes, computer screen reading due to the blurred vision. So, reading or discontinuing homework may be necessary for some students due to the difficulties with concentration, sleep patterns, and mood irritability. So for these students, it may be necessary to schedule a resource room period at the beginning of the day to get assignments ready for the day, or at the end of the day to complete assignments before leaving for school. So preferential seating can be used to help with vision, focus, reduce visual or auditory distraction, and allow for discrete monitoring, which can help them more focused. So, we have here the two types of bipolar disorder, or what we call the mood of episodes. So we have the mania and depression. So the characteristics of mania is when they're feeling extremely happy, excited, energetic, or sometimes angry. So these may be sometimes they will talk really fast or sleep less or make risky decisions. So for the depression is when they're feeling very sad, tired all day, hopeless or not interested in anything. So these mood changes are more intense and last longer than the normal person's mood swings. So a person can feel fine between episodes. So now we're done with the five types of learners with social emotional disorder. So next, I'll be discussing the learners in difficult circumstances, like how can the environment affect to the learning streak to the learners. So, you know that all children are not fortunate enough to receive an environment which is conducive to provide appropriate development opportunities. So, the need to protect some children is certainly greater than the others due to the specific socio-economic and political circumstances and geographical location. So, they are more vulnerable in terms of the risk to their right to survival, development, protection, and participation. So, these are the children in especially difficult circumstances. So, what are those circumstances? So, first is we have the living in remote places. So, children who live in urban or rural zones often find themselves in a precarious situation due to the extreme poverty. They can hardly satisfy fundamental needs such as nutrition, access to health care, education, and are often exposed to danger, just such as car accidents and violence are also part of their everyday lives. So, children living in a remote places or areas are often face serious challenges that affect their education system or even their learning process. So, many families in these places live in poverty, like most of them. So, it makes it hard to provide basic needs like food, healthcare, especially healthcare, and school supplies. So, school may be far away and may not be enough teachers or materials. These make it difficult for children to attend regularly or focus on learning. So, they may also face dangers such as accidents, violence, or unsafe environments. Because of these struggles, many children in remote areas fall behind in school or drop out because they need extra support to get equal chances in education. So every child deserves the opportunity to learn no matter where or what they live for. Okay, so here we have the challenges of children living in urban or rural areas. So children walk long and dangerous journey to school. Teachers need training in children's hygiene and health, and rural schools need a better infrastructure. Okay, so next is we have here victims of war. So a person that suffers from destructive action undertake as a result of an armed conflict between two or more parties. So in this situation, children may not be able to go to the school because of the war or conflict going on their areas or places. And also they are forced to live in evacuation facilities because it may not be safe for them to go around the school or even in the streets. So just like what happened in Gaza, the conflict between Gaza and Israel. So many children in Gaza are suffering from the traumatic experience they had recently because of their political circumstances. The people are suffering. So as well as their education system are affected. So yeah, the children are forced not they are not forced, but the children are not going already not going to school because it may not be safe already. So it is said that countries that are at the war are being used as human shields, killed, maimed, or recruited to fight. So rape, forced, and abduction have become standard tactics in conflict. So children living in conflict zones around the world have continued to suffer in true extreme levels of violence over the past 12 months, and the world has continued to feel them. So many war victims, however, are anxious or depressed or easily startled without qualifying for either of these formal diagnoses. Complex PTSD and disorders and of extreme stress are found in individuals who have experienced prolonged and repetitive exposure to traumatic stressors. So, the impact and effect of the people or the victims of war are death, injury, disability, illness, rape, and prostitution for subsistence, moral and spiritual impacts, child soldiers, displaced children, orphans, and lastly, exploited children. So the effect of living in a war zone or prone in war are countless effects countless effects of armed conflict on children who are very vulnerable and unable to protect themselves. So the effect on the children's education is enrollment is going down, a lot of children are dropping out of school, school conditions are bad, low levels of educational attainment, and abuse is committed. So now, Teacher Judy will continue the discussion about the learners in difficult circumstances.
So now, I will be discussing about the products of a broken family. So a products of a broken family is a family in which the parents are separated or divorced, disrupted to your child's life, no matter how carefully you protect him. Over time, your little one will come to accept his new normal, but recognize that it will take time for this acceptance to happen and that behavioral bumps will occur along the way. For example, a broken family is if a mother and father are both separated, there are things to consider. First is the lifestyle. It will adapt to the nature of their life since the child can easily adapt and decide if there's a problem will arise. They can say if my parents are separated, why not I also not honor their relationship? Both because they don't consider the value of family relationship. So that is the effect of the products of a broken family to a child who is studying. Next is the street children from impoverished family. So these are children who have no homes but the streets and no family support. They move from the place to place, living in shelters and abandoned buildings. These children live on sidewalks or city squares with the rest of their families. They may be displaced due to poverty, wars, or natural disasters. So these children's mostly we can see either in Quezon Park or beside the cathedral, or either in Freedom Stage, or even besides on the Metro Bank or any sidewalks. So street children from impoverished family are young individuals who lack a permanent home and family support, often living on the streets, in shelters, and abandoned buildings. They frequently move from place to place, seeking safety and survival. So this situation arises from various factors, including poverty, family breakdown, and displacement due to natural disasters or conflicts. Upon searching, I see that in the Philippines, for instance, approximately 250,000 street children are estimated to be living or working in the streets. Okay, so the last topic is victims of abuse. Abuse can take various forms, including physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect. Its impact can be profound, affecting victims' physical and mental well-being, relationship, and overall quality of life. So abuse is defined as any action that is intentionally harms or injures another person. In short, someone who purposefully harms another in any way is committing abuse. There are many kinds of abuse encountered by adults, not just adults. It includes physical, psychological rape, sexual assault, verbal abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, and other. More, these are some of the most common abuse, and also it is called a victim's abuse when it is an harmful or physical or mental treatment of a person. So it will, and mostly these children face numerous challenges such as lack of access to education, healthcare, and adequate nutrition, making them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. Addressing their plight requires comprehensive efforts, including providing safe spaces, education, and support systems to help reintegrate them into the society and ensure their well-being. So that is the impoverished family.